My friend, I invite you to pause for a moment. Wherever you are, whether in an office buzzing with activity, at home juggling responsibilities, or sitting quietly before the day's demands press in, I want you to imagine that time itself has slowed to a single, elongated breath. In that breath, you stand at the threshold between impulse and action. You have not yet spoken the words poised on the tip of your tongue. You have not yet sent that angry reply. You have not yet allowed frustration or pride to seize control. In the span of just 3 seconds, so much is possible. You have the power to choose how you will respond to whatever provocation stands before you. This, in essence, is the 3-second rule, a tool you can employ to respond like a Stoic when life's provocations threaten to unsettle your composure. It might sound almost too simple, this idea that 3 short seconds could hold the key to controlling your response under stress. Yet, if you reflect on your past experiences, moments when a single angry retort changed the trajectory of a relationship, or when an impulsive decision cost you dearly, you will see how swiftly a heated emotion can push you into action, sometimes with regrettable consequences. That is the interval we must harness. Instead of letting it sweep us along, we seize those seconds, mold them, and make them our allies. This practice, seemingly small, can become a pillar of composure, granting us a power far greater than we might imagine. But let us begin where all true Stoic reflections begin, with the recognition that external events do not, by themselves, create our reactions. The Stoics were clear on this. Whether someone insults us, or we face a sudden setback, or we read an upsetting piece of news, the raw event is not what determines our emotional state. Rather, it is our interpretation, our immediate inner commentary that sets the tone. If you interpret an insult as a mortal wound to your pride, you will inevitably flare up in anger or retreat in shame. If you choose instead to see it as mere noise, a dog barking behind a fence perhaps, your heart remains untroubled. Now, you might ask, how does the 3-second rule fit into this idea of interpretation? Consider this. In the very moment you feel provoked, your mind receives the raw impression. Someone has said something cutting, or a misfortune has struck, and your emotions stir. Without conscious intervention, you may lash out, raise your voice, type a scathing message, or do something you will soon regret. But if you can catch yourself, if you can notice the surge of anger or fear rising from within, and then hold it at bay for a mere 3 seconds, something magical can occur. In that brief interval, you can ask yourself a simple question. Is this emotion, this immediate impulse, the best guide to how I want to respond? Let me illustrate with a short anecdote from my youth. I was in the midst of a tense conversation with a friend, someone I admired but who had, in my view, been selfishly dismissing my concerns. The argument escalated. My voice rose, and so did his. I recall him flinging an insult at me that cut right to the heart of my pride. In that instant, my blood rushed, and my mind filled with retorts I wanted to hurl back. Had I followed that impulse, like a horse bolting when spurred, I might have said something irreparable. But for reasons I could not fully articulate at the time, I paused for a breath. Perhaps it was just a flicker of caution. Perhaps it was a nascent Stoic sensibility, though I was not consciously studying Stoicism back then. Regardless, that single breath gave me time to question whether I truly wanted to escalate the conflict. My friend's insult hung in the air, but I realized that my immediate anger would only pour fuel on the flames, possibly ending our friendship on a bitter note. So I responded more calmly than I felt, saying something like, "I hear your frustration, but let's take a moment before we say words we can't take back." The tension lingered, but it did not explode. We parted ways that night, hurt but not irreconcilable. Later, we mended fences. I now see that tiny pause as the difference between a temporary quarrel and a permanent rift. This is the heart of the 3-second rule. It is not a literal law, nor is it a foolproof formula guaranteeing perfection. Rather, it is a mental checkpoint, reminding you that you hold the reins of your reaction. When faced with a provocation, be it a rude comment, a surge of panic, or a blow to your pride, you do not have to respond at once. 3 seconds is enough time to interrupt the chain reaction between stimulus and reflex. It is enough time to ask, do I really want to let this emotion shape my next action? Or, what is the wisest response here? To anchor this concept more firmly, let us explore the Stoic principle of impressions and assent. According to the ancient philosophers, when an event occurs, your mind receives an impression, a raw piece of sensory data. Then, almost instantly, you either assent to that impression, embracing it as reality and reacting accordingly, or you withhold assent, evaluating it more carefully. In modern terms, you might think of it as the difference between letting your knee-jerk reaction run the show and letting your rational mind weigh in first. The 3-second rule effectively creates a space where you decide whether or not to give assent to your initial interpretation. Instead of letting your mind automatically label a rude remark as a grave affront that demands retaliation, you pause. You might realize that the remark is not worth internalizing, that it reflects the other person's bad day or ignorance, or that stooping to their level gains you nothing. Of course, you might say, 3 seconds is too short to do all that thinking. Emotions hit me before I have time to reflect. That is precisely why this practice must be cultivated. It won't come naturally if you only try to apply it during explosive moments. You need to build up the habit daily, even with small provocations. You might practice it when someone cuts in front of you at the coffee line, or when your spouse forgets something important, or when a coworker's email has a snippy tone. In those relatively minor encounters, pause. Count silently. 1, 2, 3 before responding. Let that short interval become second nature. Then, when bigger storms arrive, you will have the muscle memory to hold your tongue or still your hand just long enough to let wisdom guide you, rather than anger or fear. Let us consider the psychological mechanics behind this. Neuroscientists talk about the difference between the fast emotional processing centers of the brain, such as the amygdala, and the slower, more deliberative centers in the prefrontal cortex. When provoked, the amygdala can trigger a fight-or-flight response in milliseconds, pushing you toward confrontation or retreat. But the prefrontal cortex, which handles more complex reasoning, needs slightly more time to weigh the situation. By giving yourself that 3-second window, you allow your higher cognitive faculties to catch up, to put the brakes on an emotional hijack. It is a small but potent safeguard against impulsive words or deeds. Additionally, this rule resonates with another core Stoic tenet: focusing on what is within your control. You cannot prevent others from saying hurtful things, nor can you eliminate all adversity from your life. But you can decide how you interpret and respond to these external events. The 3-second rule is a direct application of that principle. It says, yes, you were insulted or threatened, but your immediate emotional surge does not have to govern you. You can choose a different course. I recall an episode involving an older mentor of mine. a man well seasoned in leadership roles. A younger colleague publicly criticized him in a rather brash, humiliating fashion during a team meeting. I was present, and I felt my own secondhand anger rising on behalf of my mentor. But he, to my surprise, simply paused for a breath. I could see the flicker of hurt or annoyance on his face. He was human, after all. But he let that flicker pass. Then he spoke in a measured tone. "I appreciate your passion, though I think you may misunderstand my position. Let's clarify once we wrap this meeting." The tension in the room dissolved, and the conversation moved on. Afterwards, I asked him how he stayed so calm in the face of such blatant disrespect. He smiled and said, "Over the years, I've learned that 3 seconds of silence can keep me from doing something I'll regret. By the time I finished those 3 seconds, I realized that reacting with anger would serve no one." He then spoke privately with the young critic, addressing the issue maturely. Had he lashed out, the entire work culture would have suffered, along with his own sense of self-respect. I share that anecdote because it underscores how the 3-second rule, while simple, can preserve relationships, reputations, and personal peace. Indeed, many men sabotage their progress or their standing by yielding too quickly to anger, fear, or pride. One outburst, one rash email, can unravel months or years of credibility. By contrast, even a momentary display of calm under fire can elevate your stature and earn others' respect. People often admire the one who can maintain composure when provoked, for it indicates a depth of character that is all too rare. Yet, we must acknowledge that sometimes anger or a firm response is warranted, especially when faced with genuine injustice or urgent threats. Stoicism does not preach cowardice or silence in the face of wrongdoing. The 3-second rule simply ensures that if you do choose to speak firmly or take decisive action, you do so with clear intention rather than blind emotion. For instance, if you witness someone being harassed, your 3-second pause might confirm that stepping in to defend them is morally right. You proceed with controlled assertiveness instead of a reckless fury that could escalate the situation further. Thus, the rule doesn't extinguish righteous anger. It refines it, ensuring that your anger, if used, is harnessed productively and ethically. Let us move deeper into how to practice this rule in everyday life. One method is to set a micro goal. Today, whenever I feel a flash of annoyance, I will take a slow, deliberate breath before uttering any words. That breath, lasting about 3 seconds, becomes your anchor. You might physically count 1, 2, 3 in your mind as the air moves in and out. This short interruption can be remarkably effective, even if it feels somewhat forced at first. Over days, your threshold for emotional hijacks can rise. What used to spark immediate tension might now produce only a mild stirring, as you know you have the tool to handle it calmly. Another complementary practice is journaling. At day's end, reflect on moments when you succeeded or failed to apply the 3-second rule. If you slipped and reacted impulsively, examine the trigger. Could you have paused? What difference might 3 seconds have made? By bringing these instances into conscious review, you cultivate a sharper awareness for next time. Over weeks, you begin to see patterns. Certain people, topics, or situations might reliably provoke you. Armed with that knowledge, you can anticipate those triggers and be ready to deploy your rule the instant you sense your emotions swell. It's important, however, to avoid turning the 3-second rule into a rigid obsession. Stoicism emphasizes balanced self-discipline, not anxious self-policing. If you occasionally speak up sooner, or if you find yourself in a fast-moving crisis that demands split-second decisions, do not chastise yourself. The rule is a guiding principle, not a dogmatic law. You adapt it to circumstances. The essence is to cultivate enough mindfulness and self-control so that you never feel forced by your emotions into regrettable actions. The rule is about empowerment, not self-imposed tyranny. Now, let us connect this idea to a broader Stoic perspective. The principle that adversity, including provocations, can serve as a form of training. When someone pushes your buttons or life throws a curveball, it is as though you have been handed a weight to lift in the gym of character. If you handle the weight carelessly, you might injure yourself through rash words or choices. But if you lift it with skill, applying the 3-second rule to maintain your composure, you strengthen your resilience. Over time, repeated practice under adversity yields a calmer, more centered version of you. Indeed, the Stoic sees provocations not merely as annoyances, but as opportunities to refine virtue. Think of them as tests that keep your mental reflexes sharp. Each time you pass the test by pausing before reacting, you fortify your capacity for self-command. In some men, however, there lingers the doubt. What if I look weak by not responding immediately to an insult? Won't people think I'm timid or can be walked over? This is a misunderstanding of Stoic calm. Genuine calm, tempered by virtue, rarely appears weak. Instead, it often radiates quiet confidence. A man who refuses to be baited into an emotional reaction demonstrates an inner strength that can be more formidable than an angry outburst. Onlookers often sense that he is not swayed by petty attacks, that his dignity does not hinge on proving himself through shouting matches. Of course, this does not mean you never address insults or disrespect. It means you do so on your terms, with controlled resolve rather than flailing emotion. If someone continues to treat you poorly, you can respond assertively, drawing boundaries or seeking redress if needed. But you do so from a place of calm authority, not a knee-jerk meltdown. Let us also address the scenario of digital communication, a realm where many modern men stumble. Text messages, emails, and social media posts can provoke us in ways that feel instantaneous. A snide remark on social media might lead you to fire back an equally biting reply. But the 3-second rule applies here too, arguably even more so, because the digital medium can magnify misunderstandings. When you read something that sets your blood boiling, step away from the keyboard for a moment. Count out 3 slow breaths, which might take longer than 3 seconds, and that is fine. Ask yourself, is responding in anger the best approach? Could my words be misread or escalate the conflict? Often, that short pause reveals that a calmer approach, or even no response at all, better serves your dignity and your objectives. Within workplaces or online forums, the men who earn lasting respect are typically those who keep a level head, offering measured, reasoned input rather than provocative outbursts. The 3-second rule can thus protect not only your relationships, but also your professional reputation. Indeed, many a career has been derailed by an ill-timed rant or email sent in the heat of anger. By pausing, you shield yourself from such errors and cultivate a reputation for maturity. Now, we must also consider how the 3-second rule dovetails with Stoic self-awareness of internal triggers. Sometimes, a provocation from outside intersects with our own buried insecurities or unresolved anger. If someone questions your competence and you harbor deep fears of inadequacy, you might be more explosive in your response. Recognizing this, you can see that the real provocation arises not solely from external words, but from internal wounds. The 3-second pause offers a chance to realize you are not just reacting to the present slight. You are reacting to a fear within yourself. By shining light on this deeper layer, you might handle the situation differently, addressing the root insecurity rather than lashing out at the messenger. Over time, healing such insecurities can further lessen your tendency toward reactive anger. Let me share a more personal reflection. In my mid-30s, I carried a lingering sense of imposter syndrome. Though I had achieved some success, I felt at times unworthy, as though any moment people would discover I was a fraud. Predictably, whenever someone questioned my expertise, a surge of defensive anger would well up within me. Before I discovered the 3-second rule, I often snapped or retreated in bitterness. But once I began practicing that pause, I realized I was not truly angry with the questioner. I was battling my own self-doubt. That realization allowed me to respond more calmly, sometimes even acknowledging my own uncertainties while reaffirming the competence I did have. In turn, the external provocations lost much of their sting, and I grew more comfortable with constructive criticism. Indeed, pausing helped me differentiate between malicious attacks and helpful challenges. The result? I advanced in my career with fewer emotional bruises, and I began to shed that insidious sense of being an imposter. Of course, the Stoic path is not free from obstacles. Applying the 3-second rule consistently demands diligence. You may revert to old habits under intense stress, especially if you are tired, hungry, or already burdened with worry. That is natural. The point is not to expect perfection, but to cultivate awareness so that over time, slips become rarer and are quickly corrected. If you do lash out once, reflect on it, forgive yourself, and renew your commitment. The transformation unfolds gradually, but each success, each moment you dodge the trap of knee-jerk anger, reaffirms your autonomy over your reactions. One might also explore how the 3-second rule intersects with Stoic virtues: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. Wisdom, for instance, requires you to see events clearly, free from the haze of raw emotion. By pausing for those precious seconds, you let wisdom speak before anger or pride can drown it out. Justice urges you to consider fairness and the well-being of others in your response. The pause lets you weigh whether your words might harm someone unfairly. Courage might push you to speak truthfully if needed, but again, courage does not equate to reckless venting. It is the bravery to act rightly even under emotional pressure. Temperance, meanwhile, is the virtue of self-restraint, precisely what the 3-second rule cultivates. By controlling your immediate impulses, you practice temperance in real time. In that sense, the 3-second rule is not an isolated trick, but a practical expression of Stoic virtue in daily life. Now, you might wonder, if I adopt this approach, will I not be seen as aloof or detached from normal human emotion? The short answer is no. True Stoic calm is not coldness. You still feel, you still care, and you still engage passionately with life. The difference is that you do not let raw emotion overshadow your reason or your values. People might initially be surprised when they notice you no longer flare up at minor irritations. Some might even test your composure, poking at you to see if they can provoke a reaction. Keep holding steady. Soon enough, they may come to respect your unflappability, realizing it stems from an inner strength, not from numbness. Furthermore, practicing the 3-second rule can enrich your personal relationships. Imagine a couple's disagreement. One partner says something hurtful in the heat of the moment. Normally, you might respond in kind, fueling an escalating argument. But if you pause for 3 seconds, you might see your partner's words as an expression of deeper frustration or pain. Rather than retaliating, you might say, in a calmer tone, "It seems you're really upset. Let's figure out why." This shift in approach can help de-escalate tension and foster understanding rather than breeding further conflict. Over time, those around you may feel safer sharing their feelings, knowing you won't fly off the handle, and that leads to stronger bonds. The Stoic tradition also encourages us to practice negative visualization, imagining potential setbacks or conflicts in advance, so we are not blindsided when they occur. You can link this with the 3-second rule by visualizing how you would respond calmly to a given provocation. For example, if you suspect a coworker may criticize your project, or if you fear a family member might challenge your decisions, mentally rehearse the scenario. Picture the moment they deliver their critique, and then see yourself pausing, breathing, and choosing a reasoned reply rather than an impulsive retort. When the real event happens, your mind finds it less jarring because you have, in effect, already practiced the calm reaction. Some men find that physical anchoring techniques can bolster the 3-second rule. If you notice tension creeping in, you might unclench your fists or deliberately relax your shoulders. This physical act can pair with counting 3 heartbeats or 3 slow inhales. That synergy between body and mind can solidify the pause, reminding you that you are grounded in the here and now, not a prisoner of your emotion. Ultimately, the 3-second rule highlights a larger Stoic truth. We are never as powerless over our reactions as we might think. It is easy to blame external stimuli. "He made me angry," or "that situation forced me to lash out." Stoicism rebuts that. Yes, the world can be harsh, and yes, your emotions are natural, but you retain the choice of how you act upon them. The 3-second rule is the daily, accessible instrument for exercising that choice. In a mere blink of time, you reclaim mastery over yourself. As we proceed, I will outline scenarios, expansions, and deeper philosophical ties that can help you integrate this rule more thoroughly into your Stoic practice. You might ask, can 3 seconds really change my life? It might seem like an exaggeration, but consider how many regrets were born in less than 3 seconds. A hasty insult that ended a friendship, an impulsive post that ruined a reputation, a violent reaction that led to legal or personal disaster. If those destructive choices had been intercepted by 3 seconds of calm reflection, entire paths could have changed. That is the scale of transformation we are discussing. So do not underestimate this small but mighty pause. Moreover, the 3-second rule does not stand alone. It aligns seamlessly with other Stoic disciplines, such as journaling, setting daily intentions, negative visualization, and the philosophical framework of focusing on what is within your control. If you treat these Stoic practices as a cohesive system, you will find the 3-second rule is but one facet of a broad strategy for cultivating resilience and virtue. Yet, it is a potent facet, one you can deploy at any time, under any provocation, whether it be a personal slight, a professional dispute, or the random vicissitudes of fate. Thus, we begin this journey into understanding how to respond stoically to provocation, guided by a simple principle. Pause for 3 seconds, and in that pause, reclaim your power to choose. In the next parts of our exploration, we will go further, dissecting real-life examples and challenges, addressing potential misunderstandings, and revealing how you can grow from a man at the mercy of his impulses into one who calmly steers himself even in rough waters. Let that transformation begin now, in the quiet space between your next breath and your next word. For in that space, however brief, lives the very essence of freedom the Stoics cherished. Freedom from unthinking reaction, and freedom to live aligned with reason and virtue. My friend, welcome back. By now, you have been introduced to the concept of the 3-second rule, that seemingly modest but powerful pause between feeling provoked and choosing your response. In our first conversation, we explored how these 3 seconds can break the chain of knee-jerk reactions, giving you room to align your thoughts and emotions with the Stoic principles of self-mastery. Perhaps you have already experimented with this idea in small ways, pausing before responding to a sharp comment or stepping back from a sudden impulse to react harshly. If so, you might have glimpsed that subtle yet profound sense of control that arises when you no longer allow external stimuli to dictate your state of mind. Yet, the true potential of this practice extends far beyond those initial forays. In order to integrate the 3-second rule fully into your life, you must delve deeper into the psychological landscape that shapes your reactions, as well as the broader Stoic framework that supports your resolve. To that end, let us now journey through more nuanced applications, potential challenges, and the Stoic wisdom that can fortify your efforts. By the time we finish here, I hope you will see that those 3 seconds do not just help you navigate quarrels or irritations. They become a gateway to living with greater intention, clarity, and moral purpose. Before we plunge into specifics, let us recall a fundamental Stoic insight. Your mind is your own domain. If you reflect upon the events of your day, the traffic jams, the curt emails, the unexpected requests, each can tempt you to claim, "That made me angry, that forced me to hurry, that ruined my day." But in truth, these external conditions merely present stimuli. What grants them the power to shape your emotional state is your own assent, your decision to interpret the stimuli as personally damaging or vexing. The Stoics often described the mind as a fortress or citadel, impregnable except by your own permission. The 3-second rule operationalizes that notion. It offers a tangible method to withhold permission for anger or anxiety to seize you. Instead, you consciously choose your reaction, guided by your inner fortress's command. Even if the external environment remains chaotic, you stand firm on your mental high ground. Now, let us examine the emotional processes that unfold when you are provoked. Typically, a provocative event triggers a swift surge of feeling. Anger, fear, resentment, indignation, flooding your body with adrenaline, quickening your pulse, perhaps tightening your muscles. Concurrently, your mind races to interpret the threat. He disrespected me. This is unfair. I'm losing control, and so forth. Almost instantaneously, a reflexive urge arises. Maybe you want to shout back, strike out, or recoil. The entire sequence can happen in a heartbeat, leaving little room for reasoned reflection. But the 3-second rule intervenes by introducing a buffer. You notice that surge, you sense the urge, and you tell yourself, "Wait, 3 seconds of calm." In that window, you can check your interpretation. Is it accurate? Is it catastrophic? Could there be a more measured perspective? Might your immediate impulse do more harm than good? Consider a common workplace scenario. You have spent days on a project, only to have your supervisor dismiss it with a curt, "This isn't what I asked for." You feel a jolt of frustration or shame. Your inner voice might snarl, "He doesn't appreciate my effort," or "He's humiliating me in front of the team." The reflex might be to defend yourself aggressively or brood in silent resentment. But if you apply the 3-second rule, pausing just long enough to let your mind catch up, you might realize that perhaps your supervisor's tone, while harsh, could stem from stress or unclear expectations. Maybe you can calmly ask clarifying questions or propose solutions. Even if your supervisor's negativity is truly out of line, you preserve your own dignity by not snapping back impulsively. That measured approach not only spares you from regret, but can also salvage the relationship, giving you a chance to demonstrate professionalism under pressure. Over time, such behavior can mark you as a leader in your organization, someone who does not crumble or lash out when criticized, but who seeks constructive ways forward. Yet, sustaining this approach is often more challenging when the stakes are personal. When your loved ones, your honor, or your self-worth feels under direct attack. Suppose a family member criticizes your lifestyle or decisions, or a friend betrays your trust. In these moments, the emotional intensity can be far greater than in a workplace disagreement. The 3-second rule still applies, but it may feel more taxing. You might feel that the offense cuts to your core, and your mind clamors for a fierce defense. In such cases, you can fortify yourself by remembering that the greatest danger lies not in what has been said or done to you, but in letting anger or fear dominate your subsequent actions. That does not mean you remain passive. If a boundary must be set, you can set it. If a wrong must be addressed, you can address it. But the crucial difference is that your response is chosen in a deliberate manner after that brief pause, rather than unleashed in a blind wave of emotion. Let us delve into how the 3-second rule intersects with one of Stoicism's cardinal virtues, temperance. Temperance involves moderation and restraint, not in the sense of denying your human feelings, but in channeling them wisely. When provoked, a temperate man does not suppress his anger entirely. He acknowledges it, feels its heat, and then decides whether to harness or release that energy. The 3-second rule is the moment of stillness that allows temperance to flourish. Without that pause, anger can become an unchecked blaze, scalding you and those around you. With it, anger might transform into a calmer resolve, perhaps fueling a steadfast refusal to be disrespected, but expressed in a way that upholds your dignity. Now, you might ask, is 3 seconds truly sufficient for such transformation? Perhaps not every time. There will be situations, sudden crises or extreme provocations, when you need more than 3 seconds to regain composure. But symbolically, the 3-second rule reminds you that you do not need infinite reflection to alter your course. Even a small delay can interrupt the cycle of impulsive reactivity. This principle extends beyond anger to other intense emotions like jealousy, panic, or even unbridled excitement that might lead you astray. By pausing, you give yourself a sliver of autonomy, an opportunity to say, "Yes, I feel this emotion, but do I want to be governed by it?" I recall an instance where a close friend faced a sudden public accusation about his integrity. Unfounded rumors that questioned his honesty in handling finances at a community fundraiser. His initial impulse was to confront the accusers publicly, spewing indignation. But he paused. In his words, "I counted to 3, took a breath," and instead chose to quietly gather evidence of his innocence, patiently clarifying the facts at the next official meeting. The rumor was dispelled without a dramatic confrontation, and my friend emerged with his integrity not just intact, but more widely appreciated. Had he let his immediate fury rule him, the spectacle of a public shouting match might have overshadowed the truth. That single pause, short as it was, realigned him with reason, making all the difference. Another angle to consider is how the 3-second rule supports empathy. Sometimes, we are provoked because we misread someone else's actions. An abrupt comment might be rooted in their own stress or misunderstanding, rather than a deliberate aim to hurt you. By pausing, you create a microsecond to wonder, is he truly attacking me, or is he lashing out from his own turmoil? This does not excuse rudeness or poor treatment, but it can soften your reaction, letting you respond with questions or clarifications rather than instant hostility. Over time, that empathy can diffuse conflicts more effectively than any fiery counterattack. In personal relationships, it may reveal deeper issues you can address together. Rather than exchanging barbs, you might discover that your partner is overwhelmed at work or dealing with an unspoken worry. So, that brief pause can shift your entire perspective from me versus you to us against the misunderstanding. Indeed, misunderstandings abound in human communication. Tone, context, body language, all can lead us astray. The 3-second rule helps you avoid snap judgments, which often feed such misunderstandings. If a text message or email seems curt, your immediate reaction might be offense. But a short pause can remind you. Texts can be misread. Let me confirm the intent before feeling aggrieved. You might respond politely, "Could you clarify what you meant by this?" rather than, "How dare you say that to me?" or letting silent resentment fester. This approach leaves room for the possibility that the message was simply poorly worded, not malicious. In professional settings especially, countless conflicts could be prevented if everyone practiced a brief pause before hitting send on a heated reply. Yet, we should acknowledge that modern life can erode our capacity to pause. Our culture prizes immediacy, instant replies, quick decisions, perpetual connectivity. This environment can breed a restless, reactive mindset that runs a counter to Stoic calm. People are used to firing off responses the moment they feel slighted, driven by an underlying anxiety that they must address everything now. Embracing the 3-second rule requires a subtle rebellion against this frantic pace. It demands that you slow down mentally, if only for a few heartbeats, rejecting the notion that every impulse deserves immediate expression. In doing so, you carve out a sanctuary of calm in a world that often hurtles forward blindly. To support this practice, you might establish small rituals. For example, if you find yourself glued to digital devices, consider setting a personal rule that you never reply to provocative emails or messages without first stepping away from your screen and counting 3 deep breaths. Or, if you regularly commute amid dense traffic, vow that whenever another driver does something irksome, you will wait 3 seconds, or 3 slow breaths, before honking or muttering curses. Over time, these small, context-specific applications of the rule accumulate, training your mind to default to pause mode whenever a spark of irritation arises. Another fruitful area to apply this discipline is self-criticism, or negative self-talk, which can also provoke you internally. You might catch yourself ruminating on a perceived failure. "I messed up that presentation," "I'm incompetent," or "she rejected me, so I must be worthless." These thoughts, though aimed inwardly, still provoke a strong emotional response, often leading to spirals of self-defeating behavior. The 3-second rule can intervene here too. The moment you notice your mind launching into harsh self-blame, pause. Ask, is this thought truly serving me, or is it a flash of insecurity that I'm amplifying? Even a brief check-in can disrupt the negative cycle, prompting you to assess the event more objectively or show yourself compassion. This is Stoicism applied inwardly, reminding you that your worth is not determined by a single stumble or someone else's approval, and that immediate self-flagellation rarely produces constructive growth. Let us also speak of those times when you do need to address a wrong vigorously. Perhaps a coworker's unethical actions, a friend's betrayal, or an injustice in your community. Stoicism does not counsel passivity. However, the Stoic approach is to tackle these issues with a calm clarity that fosters better outcomes. The 3-second rule ensures you do not act in the heat of anger, but with measured determination. You might choose to confront the individual, report the wrongdoing, or organize a response. Doing so after that deliberate pause can be more effective because you articulate your stance with confidence rather than venting fury. This approach also guards against overshooting, punishing the offender more than the situation warrants or misdirecting your outrage at innocent parties. In effect, the rule helps refine moral action, ensuring it is commensurate and purposeful rather than destructive or vengeful. A particularly challenging domain to consider is long-standing interpersonal tensions, such as resentments built up over years with a sibling, an old friend, or a colleague. In these cases, provocation might be less dramatic but more chronic. Each small incident can ignite the tinder of accumulated grievance. Applying the 3-second rule is crucial here, for it interrupts the old pattern of immediate bitterness or cynicism. Perhaps your sibling makes a teasing remark that has always bothered you. Instead of sighing with exasperation or snapping, you pause. In those 3 seconds, you might recall that your sibling's teasing is partly habit, or you might realize you have the power to address the bigger underlying issue at a calmer moment. Step by step, you shift from a reflexive, grudge-based dynamic to a more deliberate, constructive one. Progress may be slow, but over time, it can mend relationships or at least lessen the emotional toll they take on you. You might ask, is it possible to overuse the 3-second rule, becoming so cautious that I lose spontaneity? In my experience, no. True spontaneity in relationships or creativity springs from genuine enthusiasm, not from rash emotional reactivity. Pausing for 3 seconds when provoked does not hamper your ability to laugh, show affection, or share ideas freely. It only filters out destructive impulses, the ones that lead to regret, conflict, or needless escalation. Stoic composure is never about stifling positive expression. It is about preventing negative reflexes from hijacking your better judgment. If anything, the 3-second rule can free you to enjoy spontaneity without the baggage of emotional fallout. Another potent ally in this discipline is gratitude, a concept sometimes overlooked in Stoic discussions yet integral to maintaining perspective. If you practice regular gratitude, reflecting daily on what you appreciate, you train your mind to see life's blessings more vividly. Consequently, provocations may lose some of their sting, as your baseline mood is more rooted in positivity and contentment. For instance, if your coworker's tone upsets you, a brief pause might remind you, I'm grateful to have a job, to collaborate with diverse personalities, and I won't let one unpleasant remark overshadow these benefits. This mental shift can dissolve anger or frustration before it fully coalesces. Let us consider also Stoic journaling, an evening or morning practice of writing a few lines about your day's experiences, emotional triggers, and successes or failures in applying the 3-second rule. You can examine each instance. What provoked you? Did you pause? How did you feel afterwards? By recording these observations, you develop self-awareness and refine your approach. You might notice patterns. Certain topics or individuals consistently push your buttons, or certain times of day, maybe when you're tired or hungry, leave you more vulnerable to impulsive reactions. Armed with that knowledge, you can proactively prepare, reminding yourself to practice the rule even more vigilantly in those high-risk situations. Over time, journaling can reveal your personal growth, as well as areas still in need of attention. Now, let us address a subtle but important point. Sometimes the provocation comes not from external sources, but from your own fleeting urges. Maybe a temptation to indulge in unhealthy habits, an impulsive desire to gossip, or a risk of overspending. While not an interpersonal conflict, these urges can still provoke an internal battle between your better judgment and your short-term cravings. The 3-second rule is equally applicable here. When you feel the urge to reach for that vice or press that buy button impulsively, you pause. Ask yourself, is this truly aligning with my goals or well-being, or is it a momentary whim? That 3-second window can let your rational mind regain control, perhaps guiding you to moderation or a healthier alternative. By practicing the rule internally, you reinforce your overall discipline, which then carries into how you handle provocations from others as well. At this juncture, you might say, "This all sounds good in theory, but are there moments when I should not pause?" Indeed, certain emergencies, physical threats, or sudden crises may demand immediate action. If a child is in danger or a coworker needs urgent help, Stoic calm still matters, but it does not require you to stand inert for 3 seconds if action is needed that very instant. The rule is not an absolute dogma, but a guiding principle for the majority of situations where the risk is that you will speak or act destructively out of emotion. Discerning the difference between urgent rescue or problem-solving and petty conflict is itself a Stoic skill. In truly dire moments, your training in composure might translate to quick, decisive action rather than panic. The 3-second rule might condense to a single heartbeat, just enough to remind you to keep a clear head as you move. Let us also consider the cultural dimension. Some cultures or social circles might expect or even reward combative responses. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where raising your voice or showing aggression was seen as a mark of toughness. Transitioning to a Stoic approach, where calm, reasoned responses take precedence, can feel like swimming against the current. You may fear losing face or being perceived as weak. However, Stoic philosophy asserts that true strength lies in the mastery of self, not in dominating others with aggression. Over time, you may find that while some people initially misunderstand your calm for passivity, many will eventually respect the maturity it represents. Even those who remain hostile or interpret your calm as vulnerability might find themselves disarmed when they cannot provoke you into an emotional reaction. In that sense, your composure can become a quiet kind of power that others may not fully grasp, but which can significantly shape interactions. One must also acknowledge that a Stoic calm is not always comfortable. Sometimes, anger or vengeance might feel momentarily satisfying. Pausing can deprive you of that quick rush. But Stoicism asks us to weigh short-term emotional release against long-term well-being and moral alignment. Over time, you may come to value the dignity and peace of mind that arise from controlling your impulses more than any fleeting pleasure from letting them have it. Indeed, many men who adopt Stoic disciplines find that regrets diminish, relationships stabilize, and self-respect grows, precisely because they forgo immediate gratification in favor of measured action. On that note, let me share a small story from my own life to show how quickly a Stoic pause can avert disaster. Some years ago, I was managing a heated negotiation for a project. Tensions were high. One morning, I received an email from the opposing party accusing me of incompetence and deceit, a baseless, provocative attack. My initial emotional surge was strong. I wanted to fire back a scathing response. But remembering Stoic lessons, I closed my eyes for a breath, letting the anger pass. I then reread the email, noticing it was riddled with misunderstandings about the terms. Instead of counterattacking, I calmly outlined the factual corrections in a reply, proposing a quick call to clarify. The result was a grudging apology from the other side and a more constructive negotiation. Had I not paused, I might have triggered a meltdown that would sabotage the whole deal. That single email exchange taught me the immense power of a short, deliberate pause, and how easy it is to derail progress by indulging emotional reflexes. I encourage you to begin noticing the earliest signs of emotional activation: racing heart, clenched jaw, or an internal monologue that escalates negativity. This early awareness is crucial. The sooner you recognize the onset of anger or anxiety, the more effectively you can deploy the 3-second rule. If you catch yourself too late, already mid-rant, it becomes much harder to reverse the emotional tide. Cultivating this early detection requires mindfulness, regularly scanning your body and thoughts throughout the day, not just when a crisis looms. Over time, you develop a kind of Stoic radar, picking up on minor shifts before they balloon into major outbursts. As you refine these skills, consider how you might pass on the practice to others, your children, younger colleagues, or friends who admire your calm. Explaining the 3-second rule as a simple strategy can help them as well. Teaching others also reinforces your own commitment, as you realize you must model what you preach. Observing family members or friends adopt the same rule can transform group dynamics. Household quarrels might become less frequent or less venomous if everyone, or at least several individuals, adopt the habit of pausing before speaking in anger. In that sense, Stoic composure can be contagious, spreading within a family, a team, or a community that values measured responses over emotional fireworks. Now, let us briefly touch on how this Stoic approach can help in mediation or conflict resolution. If you find yourself in a position where you must help reconcile two parties in disagreement, your ability to remain calm and show them how to pause can be invaluable. You might say, before either of you responds, can you take a moment to breathe and consider if your words will move us closer to a solution or further away? Even if they are not practicing Stoicism themselves, this small directive can break the cycle of verbal sparring. By modeling your own composure, you set an example of mindful communication. Repeated exposure to your demeanor might lead the disputants to emulate it, or at least to respect it enough to dial back their hostility. In essence, the 3-second rule used collectively can shift entire group dynamics, fostering more thoughtful dialogue. On a more personal level, ask yourself, how do I wish to be remembered? Or how do I want my children or peers to see me in moments of pressure? If you desire to be seen as calm, principled, and wise, The 3-second rule offers a direct path to embodying those qualities daily. It is one thing to read Stoic texts and admire Marcus Aurelius or Seneca. It is another to actively practice their teachings when your blood is up. Yet that is where real character is forged. Each time you choose to pause, you add a brick to the edifice of your Stoic self. Over months and years, the structure stands taller and more resilient, until composure becomes your second nature. But do not be disheartened if progress seems slow or if certain triggers remain stubborn. Stoics recognized the enduring nature of human passions. Even Epictetus, once a slave, wrote about his own tendencies to slip or falter. The key is perseverance. The 3-second rule is like daily weightlifting for your willpower. Sometimes you will strain, sometimes you will fail to lift properly, but consistency builds strength. With each new day, you rededicate yourself to noticing the moment of provocation and inserting that short but life-saving pause. Celebrate small victories, moments you avoided snapping or overcame an impulse, and learn from setbacks, treating them not as proof of incompetence but as signposts showing where you still need to grow. As we near the end of this second conversation, I urge you to keep integrating the 3-second rule into various facets of your life. Reflect on your environment, work, home, social circles, and identify your most common triggers. Write them down if it helps. Then, for each trigger, visualize how you might respond stoically the next time it appears. Mentally rehearse the pause, seeing yourself catch the spark of provocation and hold it at bay for 3 calm seconds. This mental rehearsal primes your brain to deliver that response when the real event arrives. Though it might feel artificial at first, it can gradually reshape your instinctive patterns. Stoic practice is, at heart, about transforming your habitual mental and emotional habits, forging them into ones that align with virtue and reason. In our next conversation, Part 3, we will explore even deeper psychological nuances, including how the 3-second rule interacts with more intense crises, how to handle repeated provocations from the same source, and how to maintain your momentum when external pressures seem relentless. We will also see how other aspects of Stoic philosophy, particularly the discipline of desire and aversion, reinforce the mind's capacity to remain still in the face of storms. Until then, I encourage you to keep paying attention to that crucial gap between provocation and reaction. Guard that gap as though it holds the key to your freedom, because in a very real sense, it does. Stoics have long taught that while we cannot control much of what befalls us, we can always control how we meet those events. The 3-second rule is your lifeline to that control, your constant reminder that no matter how heated the moment, your next step can be chosen from a place of calm purpose rather than rash emotion. And so, my friend, let each new day be a stage upon which you rehearse this Stoic art of pausing. Notice how even trivial annoyances, someone speaking too loudly in the cafe, a minor inconvenience in traffic, can serve as gentle practice rounds for bigger provocations yet to come. As you refine this skill, you will find that your life subtly transforms. Conflicts may remain, challenges will still arise, but your inner state will no longer be so easily shaken. You become a man who can hold steady, weigh his words, and act with dignity under strain. Let that transformation begin anew each time you count silently. 1, 2, 3, and discover the quiet power hidden in those fleeting moments of restraint. My friend, it warms my heart that you have joined me once again for the final installment of our exploration of the 3-second rule. and its role in a Stoic response to provocation. In the previous two conversations, we delved into the fundamental notion that pausing for 3 seconds when faced with provocation can serve as a gateway to self-mastery, preventing you from succumbing to destructive impulses. We discussed how this pause allows your rational mind to catch up to the swell of emotion and how it fits neatly into the wider tapestry of Stoic wisdom, focusing on what you can control, cultivating virtues of reason and temperance, and maintaining equanimity in a chaotic world. Now, in this final segment, I aim to tie these threads together and address some of the deeper complexities and nuances that arise when one endeavors to live by this principle day in and day out. We will consider how the 3-second rule holds up under more extreme or repeated provocations, how it intersects with broader Stoic teachings on desire and aversion, and how you can preserve your momentum even when life's demands threaten to overwhelm your resolve. Ultimately, my hope is that these reflections will solidify your practice of this short but profound pause, allowing you to move through the world as a man governed by clarity and virtue, rather than knee-jerk reaction. One of the greatest tests of Stoic composure emerges when you face the same provocation again and again. Perhaps it's an overbearing supervisor who never shows respect, or a family member whose cutting remarks are all too predictable. At first, you might find a certain triumph in pausing for 3 seconds before responding, taking a controlled breath, and choosing your words carefully. Over time, however, you may grow weary of extending patience. You might wonder whether the 3-second rule is truly sustainable when the provocation is not a one-time flare-up, but a slow, continuous grind on your nerves. Here, we must remember that Stoicism does not require you to accept perpetual mistreatment. If someone's behavior is genuinely harmful, you can and should set boundaries or even remove yourself from the situation if possible. The 3-second rule remains crucial in guiding how you communicate your boundaries or extricate yourself. Do you do so with calm clarity or in a burst of pent-up resentment? By pausing, you prevent the frustration from dictating your reaction. Instead, you can rationally articulate your position, explaining that you are no longer willing to tolerate the disrespect and will take steps to protect your well-being if it continues. Moreover, repeated provocations often challenge your capacity for forgiveness and perspective. Stoicism does not preach a naive acceptance that everyone is pure of motive, but it does encourage you to consider that your tormentor may be acting from ignorance, pain, or fear. While this does not excuse hurtful behavior, it may soften your righteous anger enough to keep you from stooping to the same level. Each time the provocation recurs, your 3-second pause can incorporate a quick internal question. Is my anger helping or harming me here? Would a calm boundary setting or a dignified departure serve my long-term peace and self-respect better than a reactive clash? In that sense, each repetition of the provocation, aggravating though it may be, becomes a fresh chance to hone your Stoic discipline. Intense provocations, those that seem to strike at your very essence, pose a related challenge. Suppose a colleague publicly calls you incompetent, or you discover a close friend's betrayal, or you find yourself in an altercation that triggers a deep-seated fear or sense of injustice. In such moments, the emotional wave can be so forceful that 3 seconds feel like an eternity in which you struggle to contain yourself. Indeed, your body may flood with adrenaline, your thoughts might race. You might even question whether your Stoic training has failed. Yet, ironically, It's in precisely these intense scenarios that Stoic practice reveals its greatest power. If you can pause even for a single breath, you regain a modicum of perspective that might avert catastrophic words or actions. You do not stifle your sense of betrayal or fear. You simply keep it from overwhelming your capacity to choose your response. Perhaps you'll need more than one pause, repeating the 3-second rule multiple times as the confrontation unfolds. Even so, each micropause fortifies your self-control and prevents total capitulation to raw emotion. At times, the best Stoic response to a dire provocation might be immediate removal from the environment rather than immediate engagement. For example, if a heated argument escalates, you can say, "I need a moment," and step out. This grants you more than 3 seconds. Maybe you take a walk, breathe, gather your thoughts. Then you return when you can speak from composure. The 3-second rule is flexible enough to accommodate such larger steps. The key is that you do not allow the provocation to drag you into an irreversible reaction before you have regained clarity. 2. The Stoic discipline of desire and aversion. To more fully appreciate the 3-second rule, it is helpful to place it within the discipline of desire and aversion, one of the 3 core disciplines in Stoicism, the others being action and assent. The Stoics taught that much of our suffering arises when we crave what we cannot guarantee: approval, comfort, fame, or when we frantically avoid what may be inevitable: criticism, discomfort, or loss. This dynamic can intensify provocation, for if you deeply desire respect from a certain person, their scorn can provoke disproportionate anguish. Likewise, if you dread conflict at any cost, a tense conversation can rattle you out of all composure. The discipline of desire and aversion instructs us to desire only what is genuinely in our control: our choices, attitudes, and moral purpose, and to accept that external goods or opinions do not ultimately define our worth. When you internalize this principle, provocations lose some of their sting. If someone insults you, you realize they cannot strip you of your virtue or self-command, which are the true measures of your character. Thus, when you apply the 3-second rule, you are not just pausing arbitrarily. You are reinforcing the Stoic conviction that external slights do not have the power to damage what truly matters: your inner moral landscape. Furthermore, desire and aversion are often the hidden engines behind impulsive reactions. You lash out because you desire immediate vindication, or you fear being seen as weak. You brood because you crave a certain outcome or dread another. By pausing for 3 seconds, you can briefly reflect on whether your reaction is being driven by these uncontrollable desires or aversions. Sometimes, the simplest question, "Is this external matter truly within my control or not?" can help you let go of the emotional pressure to force reality into your desired shape. Such self-reminders break the feedback loop of frustration or desperation that fuels overreaction. 3. Emotional aftershocks and sustaining momentum. One challenge not always addressed in discussions of Stoic composure is what happens after the immediate crisis or provocation subsides. You might successfully pause for 3 seconds in the heat of the moment, respond calmly, and navigate the situation with dignity. But then, later that evening, you find yourself dwelling on the incident, feeling a delayed surge of anger, guilt, or regret that you suppressed in the moment. Indeed, emotions can linger or resurface once the urgency has passed, like aftershocks following an earthquake. How do you handle these emotional echoes while maintaining your Stoic bearings? First, Recognize that Stoic practice does not end with the outward display of composure. If you find residual feelings stirring hours later, you can apply a mindful check-in. Ask yourself, am I rehashing the event out of fear or pride? Is there a lesson to glean here, or am I merely feeding resentment? You might take a few minutes to journal about the incident, acknowledging your emotions without letting them spiral. If you realize you remain unsettled, perhaps there's an unresolved element that deserves more thoughtful action, like a clarifying conversation or an apology if you feel you were unjust. Alternatively, it could be that your mind simply needs closure, which you can facilitate by reaffirming Stoic principles. External slights do not degrade your essence. The past cannot be changed. You have done your best to respond with virtue, and now it is time to release the burden. Sustaining momentum in your practice often involves weaving these reflective moments into your daily routine. If you encountered a provocative incident, set aside some time, maybe in the evening or early morning, to revisit it calmly. By doing so, you ensure that emotional debris does not accumulate, secretly undermining your composure in the long run. This cyclical process, responding stoically in the moment, then reflecting afterwards, reinforces your growth. Each iteration clarifies your strengths and reveals areas where you might refine your approach. Another key to preserving momentum is to remain vigilant about small provocations. It is easy to dismiss minor annoyances, like petty remarks or trivial inconveniences, thinking they do not deserve the discipline of the 3-second rule. Yet these small sparks, if repeatedly ignored, can accumulate into a smoldering discontent that eventually bursts forth as a larger outburst. By applying Stoic poise even to the seemingly insignificant jabs or inconveniences, you keep your emotional equilibrium well tuned. Over time, your threshold for losing composure rises, and you find that bigger stresses also lose some of their power to destabilize you. 4. Mastering the internal monologue. In Part 1, we touched on the Stoic idea that interpretations govern your emotions more than raw events do. A crucial aspect of maintaining your 3-second pause is learning to manage the narrative or monologue unfolding in your mind. If your inner voice automatically leaps to extremes, "He's humiliating me. I must retaliate now," it can be hard to maintain composure even with a pause. Conversely, if you train your mind to question extreme interpretations, is this truly humiliation, or am I taking it too personally? You create fertile ground for Stoic calm. One powerful technique is to adopt short, rational mantras or questions that you can recall instantly when provoked. For instance, is this truly a crisis? How does this affect my virtue? Can I control this, or must I accept it? Will anger improve the outcome? When you feel the surge of emotion, your 3 seconds can include silently repeating one of these lines. This short circuit helps transition from emotional reactivity to rational appraisal. Over time, these mantras become second nature, bridging the gap between impulse and reason. Additionally, you can practice cognitive reframing, consciously replacing negative or exaggerated thoughts with balanced perspectives. For example, if someone critiques your work in front of colleagues, your knee-jerk thought might be, "He's humiliating me on purpose." But as you pause, you might reframe it. "He might have delivered the criticism poorly, but let me see if there's merit in it, or if it's a misunderstanding." That shift, small as it is, can redirect you from a combative reaction to a calm inquiry. 5. Courage in Stoic calm. A subtle pitfall in practicing composure is conflating it with avoidance or timidity. Stoic calm does not equate to never speaking out or never confronting issues. Rather, Stoicism encourages courage, the capacity to do what is right or necessary despite fear. The 3-second rule can facilitate courageous action by ensuring that your fear or anger does not paralyze you or push you to rashness. If a situation demands that you challenge someone's harmful behavior, you do so with measured resolve rather than emotional frenzy. That measured resolve often proves more impactful. Let us imagine you witness a colleague consistently belittling a junior employee. Your anger flares at the injustice, and a part of you wants to storm into the situation, guns blazing. Another part of you hesitates, fearing conflict or repercussions. Applying the 3-second rule, you pause to let these conflicting emotions settle. In that pause, you decide that addressing this issue is indeed the right thing to do. You approach the matter calmly but firmly, perhaps speaking privately to the bully or escalating it through proper channels if necessary. Your stoic calm does not hinder you. It clarifies your purpose. You become like a steady arrow, propelled by moral conviction rather than a scattershot of volatile emotion. In that sense, the 3-second rule enhances both clarity and courage, guiding you to act effectively and ethically, rather than succumbing to a heated impulse that might backfire, or to a fearful silence that betrays your conscience. 6. Navigating group dynamics. Though Stoicism emphasizes individual self-control, group dynamics can heavily influence whether composure thrives or withers. Picture a meeting where multiple participants get heated, voices rising in competition. The collective pressure to assert dominance or win can trap you in a cycle of escalating tension. Practicing the 3-second rule in such a setting may feel like swimming upstream, but if you manage it, the effect can be transformative. By pausing before responding, you demonstrate a model of restraint and reason that can de-escalate the entire group. Colleagues might sense the shift and follow suit. Over time, if you consistently bring a calm, stoic presence to group interactions, you can subtly reshape the culture around you. People come to expect that you won't explode or take cheap shots. They may adjust their behavior accordingly, resulting in fewer provocations. This is not guaranteed, of course, especially in toxic environments. But even if external changes are minimal, your inner state remains more stable, and you preserve your integrity rather than getting pulled into the mob mentality. You can then leave each group setting with your self-respect intact, knowing you did not compromise your values in the heat of collective drama. 7. Integrating the pause into your broader life philosophy. As we near the end of our journey, I encourage you to see the 3-second rule not as an isolated technique, but as a microcosm of Stoic living. Stoicism is about more than controlling anger. It's about cultivating a life guided by virtue, reason, and perspective. Every day, circumstances will invite you to stray from these principles, whether by tempting you with vanity, provoking you with insults, or ensnaring you in distractions that erode your focus on what truly matters. In each of those moments, a deliberate pause, whether 3 seconds or 3 breaths, can be the hinge upon which your actions turn. You might formalize this alignment by setting broader Stoic intentions each morning. For example, upon waking, you might think, "Today, I will strive to act with patience, fairness, and temperance, especially when challenged." Then, throughout the day, the 3-second rule becomes the immediate mechanism by which you fulfill that intention. If someone criticizes you unfairly, you recall your morning vow and let it guide your choice to pause. Or, if you face a tempting but unethical shortcut, you again rely on the pause to connect your actions to your stated values. This synergy between daily intention and in-the-moment execution creates a cohesive Stoic practice that weaves through all your endeavors. 8. Overcoming discouragement and maintaining hope. No Stoic path is devoid of setbacks. You may adopt the 3-second rule enthusiastically, only to find yourself slipping in a moment of exhaustion or heartbreak. It is tempting to become discouraged, labeling yourself a failure or concluding that you lack the discipline for Stoicism. Yet, the Stoic tradition itself underscores that progress is incremental, and even the wisest among us falter. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor revered for his philosophical depth, repeatedly chastised himself in his meditations for falling short of his ideals. Yet he never abandoned the pursuit. He saw each day as a new chance to realign with virtue. Hence, if you do catch yourself responding impulsively or letting anger override your better judgment, view it as a lesson rather than a final verdict. Reflect on how the slip occurred. Maybe you were caught off guard, or your physical state was compromised by lack of sleep or hunger. Then adjust your strategy accordingly. Perhaps you need a more robust routine of self-reflection, or a clearer boundary with certain toxic influences. The Stoic approach is pragmatic, always adapting while holding fast to core principles. Over many cycles of trial and reflection, you will notice your composure steadies, your lapses grow fewer, and your ability to recover from them becomes swifter. Maintaining hope in the face of repeated provocations or personal setbacks is not about naive optimism. It is about trusting that Stoic practice, applied consistently, does yield profound transformation. Countless individuals have testified to the near-miraculous changes in their relationships and inner peace once they fully embraced a Stoic pause before reacting. While you may not see instant results, each small victory, each moment of calm where once you would have exploded, signals that you are carving a new neural and emotional pathway. Over time, that pathway solidifies into your default response, allowing you to meet life's slings and arrows with a dignity that cannot easily be stripped away. 9. A parting vision. The composed man in the storm. Let us, in conclusion, paint a brief vision of the composed man who has truly integrated the 3-second rule into his being. This man wakes each morning reflecting briefly on the Stoic convictions that guide him. That external events do not define him, that virtue is his true treasure, that fleeting passions should not govern his choices. He ventures into the world, busy, loud, unpredictable, knowing that provocations will come in many forms. Indeed, some days they come in droves, a harsh word from a coworker, an unexpected financial setback, a personal slight from an old friend. Yet, each time he feels the initial jolt of emotion, he draws a measured breath. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. In that short, almost imperceptible pause, he recalls that his identity and worth do not hinge on these external triggers. He chooses how to respond, sometimes with patient explanation, sometimes with firm boundary setting, sometimes with a soft-spoken acceptance that not all battles must be fought. He returns home at night, not drained by regret over words flung recklessly or alliances destroyed by temper, but instead quietly satisfied that he remained master of himself. If he faltered in a moment of fatigue, he acknowledges it without self-condemnation, resolving to learn from the slip. Over months and years, he senses a deepening serenity that others can almost feel in his presence. Friends or family members remark, "You seem less rattled by conflict these days," or "I trust you to keep a cool head when things go wrong." Far from becoming passive, he acts with greater effectiveness in the workplace or community, since impulsive outbursts no longer cloud his judgment. When crisis looms, people turn to him for guidance. When personal disputes arise, they find in him a calm mediator rather than a source of further escalation. In the quiet moments of self-reflection, this man might smile wryly at how a mere 3 seconds, a span so short it barely registers on a clock, has unlocked such a profound shift in his life. Of course, the 3-second rule alone did not deliver him. He also explored Stoic teachings on virtue, desire, and acceptance, weaving them into every corner of his daily routines. Yet, in the crucible of heated seconds when an insult stings or an obstacle looms, it is that simple pause that stands between him and emotional captivity. He sees that Stoicism is not archaic philosophy, but a living compass, and the 3-second rule is its needle, pointing always toward the power of deliberate choice. This vision is not a fairy tale. It is an attainable portrait of what you, or any man, can become through consistent practice. You need not be perfect or free from all emotion. Stoicism recognizes our humanity, but you can live with a composure that shields you from needless turmoil, fosters healthier relationships, and enables moral and practical wisdom to guide your steps. The 3-second rule is your daily ally in that pursuit. A small action repeated often enough to change the whole trajectory of your responses, and, over time, the tapestry of your life. 10th. Final encouragement. As we part ways, I encourage you not to let this conversation remain a mere intellectual exercise. Pick at least one situation in your daily life. Maybe a recurring annoyance at work, a family tension, or a personal habit you find troubling, and deliberately apply the 3-second rule each time it arises. Keep track of what happens. Do you feel calmer afterward? Or do you see improvements in how others react to you? Note any challenges, moments when you forgot or dismissed the rule. Then adapt. If you find yourself caught off guard, think about how you might anticipate the trigger or set a mental reminder. Over time, you will discover that this Stoic pause is not an unnatural imposition, but a friend who quietly steps in, giving you just enough breathing room to stay faithful to your best self. You may even find that 3 seconds expand as your confidence grows. On some days, you might afford yourself a few more seconds, or a short walk around the block, or a reflective night's sleep before deciding on your course. Regardless, you always retain the seed of Stoic calm that you plant in the brief space between trigger and action. Remember, too, that you are part of a lineage of seekers, men and women across centuries who have grappled with the same impulses, the same illusions that cause suffering. They, too, found solace in Stoic principles. Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, all wrote of this universal struggle and how the mind can rise above it with training. By adopting the 3-second rule, you join their fellowship in spirit, continuing the timeless quest for self-command. Should you ever doubt your capacity, recall that these ancient teachers, emperors, former slaves, statesmen, faced trials far exceeding many modern discomforts: wars, betrayals, exile, constant threats to their power or freedom. If they could preserve composure under such weighty burdens, we can certainly apply their methods in our own sphere, no matter how complicated our personal challenges might feel. The Stoic path was never about living free from hardship. It was about ensuring that hardship does not break you or subvert your virtue. The 3-second rule is a potent, simple tool for fulfilling that promise. In closing, I leave you with one final reflection. Each provocation is an invitation to mastery. Rather than seeing conflict or insult as purely negative, view it as an occasion to practice your Stoic muscles. Each time you succeed in pausing, each time you direct your response thoughtfully instead of reflexively, you progress a step further on the Stoic path. Over months and years, these steps accumulate into a formidable strength of character. A strength that can illuminate not only your own life, but also those you influence, be they family members, colleagues, or community members who look to you for counsel. Thus, let the 3-second rule become a living presence in your day, an ever-ready line of defense against impulsive harm, a silent partner in every conversation or conflict. May you find, as countless others have, that this small yet mighty pause can unlock a realm of wisdom and composure you never suspected lay within you. You needn't exercise anger or fear from your heart entirely. You need only place reason and virtue in the driver's seat, ensuring that your impulses serve you rather than enslave you. In that gentle, humble space of a few breaths, may you discover the calm that no external chaos can conquer. A calm that stands at the core of Stoic philosophy, beckoning you to a life of steady purpose and moral fortitude.